Hello, families, and welcome to the Founder to Founder podcast. Today, I have Christal Gamble here with us. She runs Mama's Sweet Baby, and it is a resource for families. So I'm really excited to dive in with Christal and have her share her story and her heart with us. So thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I just for reference, when I first heard Crystal's story, I thought it was so amazing. Crystal is such a powerhouse. So I'm really excited for this. But what I want to start with, just so people know about your background, can you tell us a little bit about your journey as a mom and how Mama Sweet Baby began?
So, I'm actually a mom of three. My two older sons are active duty Air Force, and they are 21 years old. My husband and I bumped our heads, and we had a kid when they were 11. And my youngest, Cash, is only 11 years old now. Now, with that said, the first two boys were easy peasy. They were as average can be. They were B students. They never got into any issues, any troubles. They went to public school. Matter of fact, the same public school I went to. And everything was hunky dory. Here comes the baby boy. We intended to do the exact same thing with him, but we learned very early on during his pre-K entrance assessments that he was gifted.
Okay.
So what happens is you put a gifted kid in a regular classroom, you start to see issues pop up that you've never seen before in your household. Things like extreme anxiety and he wanted to be excluded from things. He all of a sudden developed various tics and it was crazy because we'd always had such a very mellow baby. So all of a sudden having all these issues with school was the reason we finally decided we couldn't take it anymore. My husband and I pulled him out to homeschool, and that's where Mama Sweet Baby was created. I needed to find my community, especially as a mom of a neurodivergent learner.
That's awesome. And tell me more about that specific moment where that pushed you out of the school system and into advocacy. Tell us more about that.
So the baby boy was 4 years old. He's in a traditional classroom. I'm having all sorts of issues. Every day was a crying fit of,
Mm.
I don't want to go. I'm going to be in trouble. I'm worried the teacher's going to say I did something bad. And mind you, he had excellent instructors. This is a wonderful school district. But they realized that we needed to do something. And they sent me to the gifted and talent specialist that was for that school, who, mind you, this kid is 4. She tells me, look, we don't have any gifted services until he's in 3rd grade.
Yeah.
And for now, I can give you these worksheets. So imagine telling a parent that's having issues with her kid adjusting to pre-K that here's some worksheets and we can't help him until he's in the 3rd grade. It was a no-brainer at that point. There's not a whole lot you can do at that point when someone tells you there's nothing I can do for your kid other than to advocate for him yourself. And in this case, that looked like homeschooling.
And one of the things that you said that I love that you highlighted is that he had excellent instructors.
Yes.
Because I think sometimes when these new things that pop up, it's just an assumption that it's like, oh, the school district was horrible and they did wrong by my child. And granted, those stories do exist, but it's just simply that it wasn't a good fit for your child. And I think
Very much so. It wasn't the tragic story of
Yeah.
it was a horrible school district. This was actually the same school district I grew up in. And it was excellent. And I went on to college and grad school and had a great education. I have friends to this day in this same hometown, which is one of the reasons why I live here, that I went to school with.
Well, that's
The
amazing.
administrators in the school now are some of my classmates. So it was a lot of fun to have my big boys in my school because I could they would tell on them in a heartbeat. They just call me and be like, you know what that kid did? And we laugh about it and go on about our business. So the little one had the exact same advantage as his brothers. He was in a great school district, one of the top school districts in the entire state of Alabama, was going to get a fabulous education, just like his brothers did and just like I did. But despite all of that, it was not a good fit. It just wasn't for that particular child.
And one thing I want to mention and we started talking about this a little bit before we hit record, is that when I was a brand new teacher, I had 11 gate kids in my 4th grade class. And I was told, just give them some extra work with fun and engaging activities. And that was the only thing that I was told. And I was like, okay. So there is really this piece in education that kind of gets looked over. And I
Mhm.
kind of understand why, because when it comes to kids that are struggling, we really want to focus our energy on those children. But the children on the other side that are struggling because they are so gifted and advanced also need resources and help.
Very much so. It's only a few states that recognize gifted and talented learners as more of an IEP, as an addition that needs to be added to their records for specialization. However, most kids are seen that are gifted as they've won the lottery when it comes to academics and intelligence. So they're really kind of pushed to the side as they'll be okay. But truthfully, the biggest things you run into with gifted children are social emotional issues. And those are the things that actually will, in the long term, affect the academics. You always hear about gifted kid burnout, something that
Mm.
happens when they're a little bit later on and things don't come as easily to them. And when they finally have to learn how to study or take notes or anything along those lines, you get a lot of gifted kids that are depressed. They have a high suicide rate. They're oftentimes bullied. There's a lot going on that is overlooked just because they're smart.
Mm. And the social emotional part, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Because that's something I've never even considered myself.
So, really and truthfully, that is the biggest hurdle I think a gifted and talented kid kind of goes through. You've got kind of two levels of kids. You have a gifted kid,
Mm.
and there's levels of giftedness, anything from being gifted to profoundly gifted.
Okay.
And you also have kids that are considered more of advanced learners or higher learners.
Okay.
So, your advanced learner, higher learner is that kid that you've got in class that always makes A's, finish their tests first, answer first, volunteers to do extra stuff. That's the overachiever. Usually, the reason that they're the way they are is because they stay ahead of the curve when it comes to their education. Personally, they're motivated. Maybe parents are pushing them, but then also they're very deep into their studies and want to be seen as that smart kid. Your gifted learners often not the smart kid. They're not the ones that are going to be outgoing. They're really not the ones that'll score well on a test. Why? Because as they're sitting there taking a test, they're wondering why this particular question is phrased the way it is. And if you really break it down, it doesn't make a lot of sense. And
Mm.
the whole test finishes and the class is up and they're on question number two. It's not because they couldn't answer it, it's just because they just kind of got caught in their own thoughts. That's also the kid that gets very specific about particular things that they're into. And that's one thing that's overlooked as well.
Okay.
The high achieving advanced learner, they'll usually across the board be that straight A student. The gifted kid may be really, really, really good at math, but has trouble reading. So
Mm.
then you get into neurodivergence. So again, they're underappreciated, undercounted. Like, oh, well, you're really smart. So it's not seen that they're actually struggling in any particular subject area when they can be. Just because you're gifted in one area doesn't mean you're gifted in all areas. And we get into the social emotional. Then that's the kid that worries about, say, perfectionism.
Mm.
My son, when he was younger, because of that gifted kid perfectionism, hated to write. Writing was his thing that just drove him psycho. And this is a kid that would write a word and it looks funny to them, or the letters weren't perfect, and they'd scrub a hole in their paper trying to erase it.
Mm.
As a parent of a gifted learner and just, research, dealing with the gifted community, etc., you learn things like, well, don't force them to write. They'll get there at their own times. Maybe use a dry erase board. It's a lot more forgiving.
Mm.
And, typing may be the alternative to actually writing physically. And those are the kind of accommodations that you want to kind of think of and appreciate that it's out there. You just have to think outside the box to get there.
And thank you for sharing that, because for parents that are listening out there, I think a lot of us feel like we're on an island and we feel lost. And then we can see ourselves in other people's stories and it's like, wait a second, that's exactly what I'm experiencing, and don't necessarily have a label for it or even know where to go.
Hmm.
Thank you for sharing that. Our parents, yeah, parents and educators to know about navigating special education in this arena.
So you still have to realize that these kids need help just like any other kid that, say, has a dyslexia, dyscalculia, anything else that's going on with them. It's all about differentiated learning, being able to see that child for who they are and meet them where they are. I always love to use the analogy that we don't expect all 5-year-olds to wear the same size clothes and shoes. Well, that's the same for any type of education, and especially for children.
Oh, that's
Everything's not going to be a fit for everyone, and not even at the same time. Something that works now may not work later, and vice versa. So I knew, at least for my son, I couldn't wait till third grade. He had always been a very active, engaged learner. And when I decided to take it in and start homeschooling, I really started to read and research and pay attention to my pedagogy. What was going to work for us and what was going to work for him. You go into a gifted group on, say, Facebook, for example, and there are tons of them. If you want to find your people, find a Facebook group, just type in the search engine, gifted parents or parents of gifted learners or bright kids or any of these nomers, Mensa. You put any of this stuff in there and you will find these groups that have thousands and thousands of members of very opinionated parents and teachers.
Okay.
You ask a simple question like, my kid is very good at math. What do you think is the best math curriculum? And you will get easily 1,000 responses to the question. That's when you have to start weeding through and kind of figuring things out for yourself, especially for your kid. Everything is not for everyone. And if you've got to really hone in on what works for them. If your kid's into dinosaurs, sure, make every lesson about dinosaurs.
Yes.
But if they're into the periodic table, you might need to start learning it. It's one of those things, if they're engaged and they're interested, then you can help them navigate the journey through education by keeping them engaged and interested, which is one of the biggest quirks of gifted kids. You got to grab them or you're going to lose them.
And that's a really good point, because even as adults, like when it comes to things that we want to learn about, it comes so easily. We learn at a faster rate.
Yes.
It's more enjoyable. But when it comes to children, I think some of that gets lost. It's like, well, you just have to learn what we tell you to learn and learn it on the timeline that we tell you to learn it.
It's like being in college. We had those prereqs we had to do, and it drove us crazy. But when we finally got into that major that we chose, things got really interesting.
Yes.
And we got really focused. So imagine a kid that has that intellectual breadth at a young age that is also wanting to get into their major. You've got to meet them there.
Yeah, because that would be torture. I remember I had to wait like about 2 years to get through the prerequisites and the general stuff to get to my major. And then I started having fun. I only waited 2 years. For gifted kids, they're waiting almost their entire educational journey if you take them along with their peers, right?
Exactly. And again, you have a 5-year-old who's in a class who is, they're doing addition, subtraction, and they've been working on exponents in large numbers and memorizing pi. That was my reality. And this year this weekend is Pi Day. Why do I know this? Because I've got a kid that memorizes an extra 100 digits of pi every year. So, yeah, I was really good with 3.14. Now he's gone on. He's made YouTube videos to help other kids learn the rest of the digits of pi and tricks and songs. And I'm like, why do we care?
But he cares, and that's what he enjoys.
But he cares, and that's why I zoom in on it, and that's what you've got to really take notice of when you get to these gifted and talented learners.
So funny. Through your blog and advocacy, what questions or struggles do you hear most often from other parents?
So parents in general are having school choice issues.
Okay.
And one thing I make sure that this is slowly turned into just a community for parents of gifted learners, to a community of parents that are homeschooling, to a community of parents that are world schooling. So Mama Sweet Baby has morphed over the years, and we've been doing this together, which is why it's called Mama Sweet Baby. My son and I have been working on our platform since he was about 5 years old. The things that were important then are still important now, which are finding good resources for your kids, being able to do the type of school choice that you want to do. Whether anyone knows it or not, homeschooling, for example, is legal in all 50 states. There's no reason that you can't homeschool, but depending on what state you're in, the regulations are different. I live in Alabama. We are a low regulated state when it comes to homeschooling. Makes things very, very easy. However, up until last year, there was no funding to do it. We were paying taxes, but we were not receiving the benefits of the public school system. So just recently, we're 1 year into our state ESA, which Educational Savings Account, and we're going into the application period right now for our second year. By the third year, our ESA will be universal.
Oh, amazing.
and it gives $2,000 up to 2 students only for homeschooling families and $7,000 per student for private school students.
Okay.
So I love seeing that there's help there now. That was one big thing. There's some parents that say, "I can't do it because I can't afford it."
Mhm.
I love seeing that there's a lot more resources and curriculum now because once upon a time, there were only just religious curriculum that you really could get a hold of.
Mhm.
Now we've got secular options, we've got all sorts of things, in person, hybrid, micro schools, you name it. Now there's a lot more ways for our kids to learn. And if you are a parent with a neurodiverse learner, then that is everything to you. Because, for example, I don't teach math anymore. I quit teaching math in like second grade for my kid. He's a fifth grader now. Why? Because I don't know what he's doing.
Hear that.
I really don't. I'm lost, and I'm okay with being lost because he's not,
Mhm.
and he's got instructors that aren't. So I love the freedom that we can do this. Those challenges that were there before, not having options, not having funding, things are opening up. Things are getting better, and I'm hoping that Mama Sweet Baby is a place that still is conquering another, another thing, which is not having community.
Mhm. And that's really exciting that you have school choice and the ESAs are becoming more robust. As a
Hmm.
schooling mom, even though I was an educator first and then I became a homeschooler, when I really started to look into curriculum, as a teacher, I never had to buy a whole curriculum set. When I started to homeschool and look at the cost of some of these curriculum sets, I was blown away. I was like, I cannot afford this. Like, this is crazy. So the ESAs, like I get really excited about it because these beautiful curriculums, like the ones that I really wanted to use, I couldn't afford. But now
Hmm.
families have the support to be able to afford the really good curriculums that suit their child.
Absolutely. And even for those parents that don't want to use the curriculum, for example, because of
Yeah.
course you still have unschoolers, you got other pedagogy and philosophy when it comes to education. They still have things that they love, like music.
Yeah.
It allows you to be able to afford piano lessons. I do that with my son. It gives you an opportunity to spend it on therapies. A lot of parents need therapies for their kids. So when people think, oh, they're just buying books, no, there's a lot more out there that the kids need when it comes to their education.
And even to add to that, we are going through some testing right now, but a lot for one of my kids, but a lot of it is out of pocket pay for testing.
Hmm.
Our insurance doesn't even cover it, and it is not cheap. So when I happen to talk to people and they mention like, "Oh, these are dollars that are be taken away from the school district," I always mention I was like, "Well, this is how it has helped my family and some of the families that I have talked to." So I just really love to like flip the narrative because some people just don't know the other side of it because it's
Very much so.
big bad wolf almost of like, oh, we're taking funds, but it's like, no, we're actually what's happening. Our kids are actually getting help the way they need to be helped.
Very much so. I'll tell anyone I'm not, and then they assume that when you're a homeschooler, you're anti public school.
No.
I'm like, everybody in my household went to public school except my youngest,
Mm,
but I'm pro child. So that's the biggest thing there. I really need um, our outlook on education to focus less on how we do it and who we're doing instead who we're doing it for.
yeah.
And that makes a big difference. And then the conversation becomes more varied and the options are limitless at that point.
Yeah. In your experience, where do you see the biggest gaps in support for families, especially families of color?
So now this is something that's an interesting topic because I will tell anyone as an African American, and I actually don't use African American. My family's always said I am American of African descent.
Okay.
I've actually had less challenges when it comes to diversity in my homeschool. Now, it
Mm,
could be for several reasons because I know people that have taken their kids out of school just because they're like, I don't appreciate the curriculum. They're teaching slavery. This is going on. They treat my brown child different because he is brown. And all of these are true for their stories. Me personally, and especially as an education researcher, I work with a group of wonderful, wonderful professors across the country. And I'm one of their practitioners. And we actually dive deep into the world of home education from a Black lens. And I tell them all the time, I said, you know what? My lens is different from the next because we are not a monolith. We can't put everyone brown in the same bag.
So true.
But I do realize too, I speak from a point of privilege because I work kind of behind the scenes and I see everything. I probably can find more diverse resources than the average person.
Mhm.
That's one of the reasons I try to hope that my platform fills some of those gaps. And I will tell anyone at any time, I'm like, look, I'm a real mom. If you got a question, drop in my DMs, drop me an email, go on my page, sign up for my email list. I'm easy. I want you to succeed. And it's for selfish reasons. I realize that your kids are going to be the same kids that are going to be the peers to my kids later. The better all of our kids are,
Mhm.
the better our society will be. So I hear we're missing diverse resources. I personally don't see it. We've got more books now written by brown authors and illustrated by brown artists than ever. Curriculum, I know some wonderful curriculum providers that really give a great lens with limited bias or sometimes even just a focus on the African diaspora, which I love. We do not lack Black history in my house. Never have, never will. We celebrate Kwanzaa every Christmas, and I did the same when I was a kid.
Oh, that's
I live in Alabama. We've got great museums.
Mhm.
I'm going this weekend. Cash and I, we do a lot of road schooling, world schooling, you name it. We don't stay still to learn anything. And we'll be in Montgomery this upcoming weekend going to the legacy museums, the legacy sites. I want him to see the lynching memorials. I want him to see the sculpture park. I want him to see the museum. But this same kid is also seeing Black art across the world. So if you're lacking in diversity, if you've got those challenges, you need to seek out those that can help you get past them. Well, that we're out here. Your stuff is out here. Creators are out here. I guarantee there's something for you.
I love that you mentioned that because what we say for children is like education and learning really opens up their world. And I
Hmm.
find that like with parents, sometimes we have to open up our world, but we have to really seek it out sometimes
Yes.
because it's just not readily available. So we have to do research and find blogs like yours to find the things that we're looking for our children. So I'm happy that you mentioned that and your perspective on things because at least from my perspective things are shifting and I think it's really exciting to see
Yes.
more black and brown founders, more black and brown voices in the space. Like I get excited about those kinds of things. So it's really exciting to see.
I love it. I mean, and like I said, I see it from a point of privilege because I see the inside. But I mean, there's cool micro schools like Kind Academy, Joy Village that's in
Mhm.
Athens, and I've met these founders and their schools and their philosophies, and I've sat in on some of the things that they do with their kids, and it is absolutely awesome. It actually, if anything, it frustrates me that I can't live in all of these places to take advantage of all these things. Cash would be overwhelmed. My kid will be like, look, have we not had enough school today?
Sit down.
But me but me personally, I'm like, what do you mean? This doesn't excite you? You don't want to go and do this? Did you realize there's a freedom ride you can take?
My
But
kids are always telling me to calm down. I'm like, but this
yeah,
is so
I
exciting.
get carried away. I get way carried away. And you can imagine what Black History Month my house looks like. It's bad around here. And then we have a tendency to do museums. My kid he just started his own Instagram page called Cash in the Galleries.
Okay.
And it's all about the different art galleries he's seen worldwide.
Cool.
It is so neat for an 11-year-old. He lets me write for him. I'm
Mhm.
privileged enough to say that. But he does all of the editing and the images and the layout for his Instagram page. And I'm like, hey, y'all are worried about kids on screens. We got kids out here using these screens for good. We are at an exciting time in education. And I love it.
There's so many museums that where you can take virtual tours too,
Yes.
which is really exciting stuff,
Hmm.
especially when you can't physically be there. It's like,
Yeah,
well, let's just go there virtually.
exactly. Exactly. So I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it.
So from your perspective, like what changes would you love to see in education to better support diverse learners?
So more than anything, I think we've got to start earlier. Um,
Okay. Yeah.
Cash was identified when he was 4, and then it might have been 3, 3.5, which is young to identify someone as gifted for them to even enter Mensa. But it was definitely something that didn't cost me anything. And a lot of people now will come, especially homeschoolers, will say, how much was it? I'm looking at these prices. It's like $1,500 and up to go get this testing because it's multi-parts. You have more cognitive testing along with academic assessment. It's a lot to it. It's not a single test that they sit down and take. It is an overall assessment by a licensed therapist. So I got lucky. Cash was little. He did what was called a Bracken test to place him in his pre-K classroom. They saw something there that they wanted to look into further because they wanted to make sure the classrooms were diverse for
Yeah.
this pre-K classroom. And they said, hey, can we do more testing? So the district paid for his. But for the average parent, the thought of just spending $1,500 plus on just testing is really far-fetched and out of the way. So I will always advise, look, it's nice to be able to say your kid's a member of Mensa. That's all good and well. But you have to ask yourself when you do these type of assessments, what is the benefit that your child's going to receive from it? I personally have only used the Mensa for Kids resources. Cash has done their reading, their foundational reading program, which he thought was a lot of fun, reading the extremely long list of very, diverse books. But any kid could do that, and it's free. He has not attended a Mensa meeting. He hasn't, there's a lot of things that he probably won't even dive into maybe until he's in college or as an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But that assessment instead has given us access to things like Davison Gifted Scholars that, at the Davison Institute, their Gifted Scholar program. John Hopkins has a program as well. Of course, people have always heard, if you're in the traditional public school system, of the Duke TIP program, where they can do the PSAT in 8th grade and get gifted services on that end. So it's really interesting that there are resources out here. Some of them are more expensive than they need to be, but we still have to hone back into, do you actually need it?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that you can or can't do for your learner, just the way things are?
It's a really good point. I like that you said that because like some of the things that like when I've referred parents out, like, oh, you might want to get tested for this, like they come back and they're like, well, it costs this much money. And
Mm-hmm.
at that point, then I don't even know what to say. It's like, yeah. And that's then it's like you either pay for it or you don't. And meanwhile, there's this gap of children that through testing could probably be serviced better
Mm-hmm.
once you know what they need. So it's really unfortunate. But with the ESAs, a lot of that can start to go away.
Yes, I love that. And a big one that people rarely address, but is a definite topic of conversation, is the 2E learner. So you've got kids that are both gifted and maybe dyslexic. You've got these, this neurodivergence is varied enough that you can have a child that needs services, but they're highly intelligent. So you've got to kind of still treat what you need to, deal with what you've got to. And then if you get from a American of African descent, brown perspective, et cetera, BIPOC, we've got 3E, if you haven't heard the term before. And that's adding into a gifted diagnosis, a neurodivergent diagnosis, adding in the fact that we have issues just, dealing with the world around us as people of color that immediately are born with bias. So, there's a lot. And we're going to have to address it child by child. And there's no better person to do that than the parent.
Yes.
The parent is going to be your best advocate. They're going to be in your corner, and we're going to work harder than anybody can because we love you.
Yeah. What are some practical things parents can do to effectively advocate for their child?
So my biggest one, I'm going to go ahead and start at the top, which is vote. All of these different bills and things that are coming down, and we're seeing changes in ESAs, et cetera, are all because there are legislators in office that we put there that are introducing these bills. If we first and foremost, if we don't appreciate what's going on, we got to vote it out. Sure, we may not be in the majority, but it's that consistent voting that's going to make it a change. The reason why ancestors for it's Women's History Month right now. It's the reason why the women's suffrage movement was what it was, and, why we fought for the Civil Rights Act, et cetera. We've got to have our voice heard. And then I'm going to go ahead and say it. The squeaky wheel will get the oil. If you're that one that's dropping emails, that's making phone calls, that's writing letters, that's showing up, that's going to school board meetings, you will elicit change.
That's so true. So tell us what's next for Mama's Sweet Baby.
So Mama's Sweet Baby, we're going to lean in really, really deep into our world schooling. We just got back from Italy this year. We're planning Greece for fall.
Oh my goodness, can I come?
You know what? Cash thinks that we're rich because I just make it do what it do. It is just but it's high priority that this
Uh,
kid realizes that there's more to the world than what's here, that we are global citizens. And that's the only way we're going to actually make change is we look at it not just from a national level, but from an international level. So I don't monolingualism is not a thing in my household. That kid studies multiple languages all the time. I'm trying to get a kid out here that's gonna, really be a world changer. And to do that, we've got to get into the world. So we've got trips coming up. I'm preaching to the masses of we've got to take these kids out here and let them experience the world.
yes, so true. Well, thank you so much, Crystal, for being on the show. But before we part, how can listeners and people support your work in your community?
So you can find me on all social platforms, you name it, TikTok, YouTube, especially Instagram. I probably update it the most. And there I'm just at Mama Sweet Baby. It's Mama, MAMA, Sweet, SWEET, Baby, BABY. And it's that on all platforms. So feel free to join in the conversation, come see what we're up to. I'm constantly reviewing curriculum. I'm constantly providing information for parents of gifted learners. And I'm always going to push the agenda when it comes to school choice.
That's awesome. Thank you so much again. This was an amazing interview. I'm so excited about what you're doing and so happy that you're talking about this group of kiddos that actually need just as much help as the rest of them. So thank you for the work that you do.
And thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for everyone watching, and we will catch you on the next one. Bye.